Hello and welcome back to the PAPI English podcast. My name is Sam and I am your English teacher. In this podcast, we're going to be looking at polite ways to ask questions in English. So imagine you're going to visit the United States of America or the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, in fact, any country where English is a native language. How do you ask questions in a polite way? This is very important because in the English language, it's very important to be polite, okay? You don't want to sound too rude and too direct. In fact, where I'm from, in the United Kingdom, some people say that we are far too polite. We are way too polite, and it's very annoying. But that's the culture, okay? So we don't like to be too direct with our questions. And you might need to ask questions in all sorts of different circumstances in an English-speaking country or in an English-speaking environment for that case. For example, you might be at a bar and you want to ask for a drink. You need to be able to ask that in a polite way in English. Or for example, you're on the streets and you want to ask for directions. Again, you need to ask that question in a polite way. Or even you might be in the supermarket, you need to ask a question. Or even with an English-speaking friend, you want to ask them something politely, okay? Sometimes we're not polite with friends, but sometimes it's a very good idea to be polite with friends as well. So we're going to be looking at what you can say in this circumstance. So first of all, let's imagine that we're going to a bar and we are going to speak to the barman. How can we ask the barman a question in a polite way? The question being, I want a beer. Do you go up to a barman and say, I want a beer? This again is a little bit direct. It's a little bit rude. It's very rude. You don't say, hello, I want a beer. A little bit better is to say, excuse me, I would like a beer. But again, it's a little bit rude to go straight into a bar and say, hello, or excuse me, I would like a beer. It sounds demanding. I would like is more polite than I want. Yes. But to go into a bar directly and say, I would like a beer? No, I wouldn't say that. If the barman asks me, hello, how can I help you? What would you like? Then you can say, I would like a beer, because you're answering his question. But if he hasn't asked you a question, I wouldn't say, excuse me, I would like a beer. I would say, could I have a beer, please? Or can I have a beer, please? Excuse me, could I have a beer, please? Or excuse me, can I have a beer, please? Both of them are perfectly polite. Could I have or can I have? And then the barman is of course going to say, of course, not a problem. It's going to pour you your beer or your glass of water or your coffee. And there's going to be no problem at all. Okay, so that's how we do the bar situation, how we ask for a drink in a polite way in English. But now I want you to imagine you're on the street and you have to go to a complete stranger because you're lost and you don't know how to get to George Street, for example. Let's imagine you cannot find the way to George Street. So you go and speak to this stranger. What do you say? Where is George Street? Excuse me, where is George Street? This is not very polite in English. It's quite rude. And it sounds like you expect the person you're speaking to know the answer. There's a lot of pressure on that person. Where is George Street? I don't know where George Street is. I'm not from here, maybe. Maybe they're from maybe they're just visiting the place. So asking this question in this direct way is not good in English. So what can we say? What we tend to say is there any chance you know where George Street is? Is there any chance you know where George Street is? Is there any chance? Okay, we're taking away the pressure. We're not saying you have to know where George Street is. Okay, and then notice that we don't use the interrogative question form after is there any chance. You do not say is there any chance, do you know where George Street is? No, you use the positive, the affirmative form. Is there any chance you know where George Street is? Okay, this is what the indirect question does, because at the end of indirect question, there's no question mark. It's not a question form. Okay, you're asking a question, but in an indirect way. So then the form is not actually a question. It's crazy, I know. So, is there any chance you know where George Street is? Or is there any chance you know how to get to the supermarket? Or is there any chance you know where I am? I'm completely lost. I don't have Google Maps, okay? And the person is likely to help you, or if they don't know the answer, they'll say, "Oh, sorry, I'm not from here," or "Sorry, I'm not sure where that is." And they're not going to feel embarrassed because you already took away the pressure by saying, "Is there any chance?" Now, if we go back to the supermarket, not the supermarket, the bar, we haven't been to the supermarket yet, and we say to the barman or the barwoman, "Is there any chance you know where the toilet is?" Now, this sounds very strange because the barman or the barwoman works in the bar, so of course they know where the toilet is. So then you wouldn't say it. You would say again, could you tell me where the toilet is? Or can you tell me where the toilet is? Okay? Or would you mind telling me where the toilet is? This is another nice one you can say, would you mind? But we're going to be looking at that in some other examples. Okay, so imagine you're at the supermarket and you want to know where the bread is. You can't find the bread, so what do? You go and find the shop assistant and you say, "Excuse me, where is the bread?" No, again, no, too direct. You say, "Could you tell me where the bread is, please?" Or would you mind telling me where the bread is, please? Okay, this is more polite. This is a much better way of saying it. I wouldn't say, "Is there any chance you know where the bread is?" Because of course they know where the bread is. They work there. Okay, I hope they know anyway. And then imagine you're going to buy your bread at checkout, okay? And you would say, "Could I have a bag, please?" Or "Can I have a bag, please?" Not "I want a bag," or "I would like a bag, please." You could say "I would like a bag," especially if they ask you the question. Could I pay by card? Can I pay by card? Okay, so it's not always could I have, can I have. You can use it with other verbs. Could I pay by card? Okay, and then you're going to sound very, very polite. And even when you are talking with friends, there are some circumstances when it's a better idea to sound polite. For example, if you're asking for a favor, and this is one I mentioned a little bit before. If you want to ask for a favor from a friend, you can say, "Would you mind?" For example, "Would you mind taking me to the supermarket?" Okay, "Would you mind taking me to the supermarket?" implies by car. Okay, "Would you mind giving me a lift to the supermarket?" Okay, give a lift to take me to the supermarket by car. Okay, "Would you mind" is something we say if we want to ask a favor. And we can even take away mind. Mind isn't necessary. You can simply say, "Would you give me a lift to the supermarket?" So both of them mean exactly the same thing. Would you mind giving me a lift to the supermarket? Or would you give me a lift to the supermarket? Okay, this is something probably you would say to somebody that you already know. Okay, and that's all of it really. So at the bar, could I have? Can I have? If you're looking for directions, is there any chance you know where the supermarket is, for example? If we're in the supermarket, could you tell me? And then would you mind as well? These are all really important pieces of language you should use if you want to sound polite in English. So try and use them. Go out there and practice your English and try and impress everybody, in fact, with your super polite, super educated English speaking. This has been PAPI English, the podcast. PAPI English, practice and perfection in English. And until next time, keep studying English.